Have you been told that you're controlling in your relationship and you're thinking to yourself, no, I'm not? Is there constant tension in your relationship? Is the communication breaking down? Oftentimes, we don't really see ourselves as controlling. The truth is that we don't realize how much we can sometimes grasp onto control. And we can do it in very subtle ways, some ways that we don't even realize we're doing it ourselves. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the paradox of control, the secret ways that we can fall for this illusion, and break down the steps to finally take control of your relationship by letting go of control. So imagine this, you and your partner are planning a weekend trip. You've mapped out every detail, but your partner keeps suggesting changes. But you know that these changes are going to make the trip worse. So you start to put your foot down. You start to tell your partner all the reasons why those changes are not going to make the trip better. But the more that you do this, the more that your partner starts to dig in their heels, demanding that the changes be made to the trip. Does this sound familiar? This is an example of what we call the paradox of control. The more that we try to control the situation, the less control that we have over it. And there's a strong reason behind this. The best way to explain the paradox of control is to take a look at this diagram. So there are things that we can control and there are things that we can't control. The things that we can control are within our circle of control. They are internal processes, what we do, what we say, how we process information. Then there are things that are outside our control. These are things within our what we call circle of concern. These are external factors. So things that are outside of our control are what other people do, what other people think, world events, politics. These are all within our circle of concern. When we fall for the paradox of control, this is when we try to control things within the circle of concern, when we try to control things that are outside of us. But does this mean that we have no impact on things outside of us? Well, no, actually, there is a third ring. So like we said, the circle of control is the stuff that we do, how we respond, how we process information. However, there are things that we can influence. So these are our relationships, our environment, our health, our career. This is all within our circle of influence. And again, we have the circle of concern, which is all of the external things. This is what other people do, politics, world events, etc. So like we said, when we fall for the paradox of control, this is when we are trying to control things outside of ourselves. The more that we try to control things outside of ourselves, the less influence we have, the smaller our pink circle gets. So how do we gain influence? Well, actually, it's counterintuitive, but the way that we increase our circle of influence is by focusing on what we can control. The more that we focus on what we do, how we act, how we respond, how we process information, the bigger a circle of influence we have, the more of an influence we have on our relationships, on the environment around us, on our health, on our career. The more that we focus on the yellow circle, the bigger our pink circle gets. So control can sneak into relationships in really subtle ways. Constant criticism, micromanaging, emotional manipulation are red flags. These are controlling behaviors, right? But why are these controlling behaviors? These behaviors often start with good intentions. Ultimately, we have ideas of what is best for the relationship. So we have good intentions. We want this to be good. But repeatedly falling for the paradox of control ends up creating a lot of toxicity and misunderstandings. And over time, the result of falling for the paradox of control is a relationship that feels like a constant power struggle more than a partnership. Sometimes the paradox of control can actually be successful. We can get our partner to agree to things that they don't want to do. Sometimes they can agree to things because they simply want the conversation to be over. We can fall for this paradox of control and get this illusion of a win. But ultimately, this builds resentment. Falling for the paradox of control creates this temporary illusion that you have this control over the relationship. Your partner can start to agree logically to things that you want to do. But ultimately, this is a short-term fix. If they don't emotionally agree, then long-term, this is going to break trust and start to break what we call emotional safety. But don't worry. There's hope. I'm going to break down some of the practical strategies to break free from this paradox of control cycle and build a much more healthier relationship dynamic. So now that we've identified the paradox of control and the hidden subtle control problems that we can have within our relationships, but how do we fix it? Well, the answer lies in a subtle but powerful shift, which is setting direction instead of trying to control. So you might be thinking, aren't those the same thing? Well, actually, no, they're very, very different. Setting direction is about making mutual decisions about your future, pace and tone together. This is collaborative. It's not dictatorial. When you set direction, you're navigating as a team. You're not trying to steer the ship alone. Think of it this way. Control is about making your partner conform to your vision. Setting direction, on the other hand, is about creating a shared vision. This is the difference between saying, we are doing this my way, and asking, where do you want us to go? And the difference between the two is influence. So you might be thinking to yourself, isn't influence just another form of control? Well, no, actually, not quite. There is a subtle but crucial difference that can make or break your relationship. Healthy influence is about guiding your partner towards a common goal or vision without forcing compliance. It's kind of like being a lighthouse rather than a tugboat. You're not pulling your partner in a specific direction, but you're illuminating a path that they can choose to follow. So for example, if you want to eat healthier as a couple, instead of dictating what your partner should eat, you might suggest trying new recipes together or sharing information about nutrition. You're influencing their choices by providing your point of view, your perspective, and support and information, but not by controlling or implying that if they don't do what you think, then there's going to be some negative consequences. This is the difference between control and influence. Influence is simply knowing the right timing, the right tone to state your point of view, your ideas, your opinions in a soft way, but opening it up as a collaboration. This is how you set the direction. So how do you create influence? Well, creating influence actually means to relinquish control of the things that you can't control. For example, you can't control your partner. You can't force control over where you go. You don't have control over other people. So we focus in the opposite direction. We focus on the things that we can control, which is how do we respond? How do we react? How do we talk to people? How do we manage our emotions? The more that we focus inward, the more that we focus on how we communicate, how we regulate our emotions, how we take our partner's opinion into consideration, the more influence we have over the final decision. The more likely people are to listen to what we have to say. So by relinquishing control, by letting go of control, ironically, we actually gain more influence over the final decision. But we will never have full control over what other people do. And this can be a difficult mindset shift sometimes. Oftentimes we can fall for the paradox of control in some really subtle ways, by interjecting over other people's opinions, by talking over them, by getting upset, by giving them ultimatums. This is how we can fall for the paradox of control, by trying to control the situation, by trying to force a decision, by trying to force somebody to conform to your idea of what is happening. This actually breaks trust and causes you to have less and less influence over the situation. So what are some steps to put this into practice? How can we start setting direction for the relationship without falling for the paradox of control? Well, it all starts with transparent communication. Being open about your needs, your desires, your wants, your ideas, without overriding your partner's beliefs, their ideas, their values. This is a delicate balance, but it's crucial for a healthy relationship. So for example, let's say you and your partner are debating where to live. Instead of insisting on your preferred location, you might say, I would love to live closer to the city because it would shorten my commute. But it's not just about me. What do you think about maybe moving closer to the city? This helps to open up a dialogue where both of you can express your needs and work towards a solution that works for both of you. This approach brings out both partners' needs and wants without resorting to controlling tactics, without forcing your partner to make a decision that they don't want to make. Because ultimately, it's more important for your partner to emotionally agree. And of course, it's crucial to learn the right communication skills to navigate the conversations in the right way in order to make sure that you are not falling for the paradox of control. And this is exactly what I do with my ultra normal members. We go through the conversation skills in order to make sure that we are approaching the conversations in the right way, in the healthy way. And if you do want to join us, then join me on my free relationship bootcamp. This is where all of my successful members have started their journey on turning their relationships around. All you need to do is click on the link in the description to grab your spot today. So when you're open about your desires and listen actively to your partners, you create emotional safety. It's a space for honest communication. And you encourage them by leading the way by creating emotional safety in the relationship. And I've actually done a deeper dive on emotional safety, which I'll link to on the screen here. Ultimately, creating emotional safety is creating an environment where you and your partner feel safe to express your feelings, your thoughts, your ideas safely without negative consequences. So I'll leave you with that video on emotional safety, and I'll see you over there.